He saw the suicide bomber running toward his commander. 4 pounds of explosive strapped to the man's body, enough to kill everyone in the convoy. He had 1 second to react. One impossible choice. Tackle the bomber and die, or let his commander and dozens of soldiers be slaughtered. What he did next cost him nearly everything: his leg, his career, his future. But it saved 28 lives. This is the story of a soldier who made the ultimate sacrifice and lived to tell about it. Stay until the end to discover how a man survives losing everything he worked for and finds a new reason to live. Florent Abraham Groberg was born on May 8, 1983, in Poissy, France. He entered the world as a French citizen, son of Larry Groberg, an American veterinarian working in France, and Clara Groberg, a French Algerian woman. Young Florent grew up in a multicultural household where English, French, and occasional Arabic were all spoken. He was European by birth, but would become American by choice. Florent's early childhood in France was comfortable and privileged. His father's veterinary practice provided a good living. The family lived in Poissy, a suburb northwest of Paris, in a world of French culture, European sophistication, and peaceful prosperity. Young Florent attended French schools, played soccer like every French boy, and grew up thinking he would live his entire life in Europe. But in 1993, when Florent was 10 years old, his family immigrated to the United States. His father had received an excellent job offer in Chicago, and the family decided to make the move. For young Florent, it was traumatic. He left behind his friends, his school, his entire world. He arrived in America speaking limited English, knowing nothing about American culture, feeling like a complete outsider. Chicago in the 1990s was dramatically different from suburban Paris. The American Midwest, with its sprawling suburbs, strip malls, and car-dependent culture, felt alien to a boy raised in European cities. Florent struggled to fit in. His accent marked him as foreign. His clothes were different. His cultural references didn't match his American classmates. He was bullied for being French, for being different, for not understanding American sports or television shows. But Florent Groberg was resilient. He learned English rapidly, working to eliminate his French accent. He studied American culture, learning about baseball, basketball, and American football. He made friends slowly, proving through persistence and good humor that he belonged. By his teenage years, Florent had become thoroughly American, though he never forgot his French heritage. Florent attended Bethesda Chevy Chase High School in Maryland, where his family had relocated. He was an excellent athlete, running cross-country and track. He was fast, with extraordinary endurance, able to push through pain and exhaustion. His coaches noted that Florent had an unusual mental toughness. When other runners quit or slowed down, Florent maintained his pace, seemingly immune to suffering. He also became passionate about American ideals. As an immigrant, Florent appreciated America in ways that native-born citizens often take for granted. He saw America as a land of opportunity, where hard work mattered more than family connections, where anyone could succeed through merit and determination. He wanted to contribute, to give back to the country that had accepted his family. After graduating high school in 2001, Florent enrolled at the University of Maryland, planning to study and run track. Then came September 11, 2001. Florent was in his first semester of college when terrorists attacked the World Trade Center and Pentagon. The Pentagon was less than 10 miles from his campus. He could see the smoke rising from the burning building. Like millions of Americans, Florent watched the attacks on television, horrified and angry. But unlike most college students, Florent made an immediate decision. He would join the military. America had given his family opportunity and freedom. Now America was under attack, and Florent felt a duty to defend his adopted country. Within days, he contacted military recruiters. The military initially told Florent he had to wait. He wasn't yet an American citizen. Only citizens could become military officers, and Florent was still a French national with permanent resident status. But Florent persisted. He applied for expedited citizenship, a program available to immigrants willing to serve in the military. In 2001, Florent Groberg became an American citizen, specifically so he could serve in the United States Army. He joined the Reserve Officers Training Corps, ROTC, at the University of Maryland, beginning military training while completing his degree. ROTC was demanding: early morning physical training, leadership classes, field exercises, all on top of regular college coursework. Florent thrived. His cross-country training gave him excellent physical conditioning. His immigrant background gave him perspective and determination. He excelled in ROTC, earning leadership positions and high ratings from his instructors. In 2006, Florent graduated from the University of Maryland with a degree in criminology and criminal justice. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army, assigned to the infantry, the combat arms branch responsible for closing with and destroying the enemy. Florent Groberg was now an American soldier, ready to lead men in combat. He attended infantry officer basic course at Fort Benning, Georgia, learning the tactics, weapons, and leadership skills necessary for combat. Then he attended Ranger School, one of the Army's most difficult leadership courses. Ranger School is 2 months of sleep deprivation, constant physical exertion, and leadership under extreme stress. About 50% of soldiers fail Ranger School. Florent graduated, earning his Ranger tab and proving his toughness. Lieutenant Groberg was assigned to the 4th Infantry Division based at Fort Carson, Colorado. His unit deployed to Afghanistan in 2009 for his first combat tour. Afghanistan was very different from Iraq. Mountainous terrain, rural villages, tribal culture, and an enemy that blended seamlessly with the civilian population. American forces were trying to stabilize the country, build Afghan government capacity, and eliminate Taliban insurgents. Florent's first deployment was difficult, but not catastrophic. He led infantry platoons on patrols, working with Afghan forces, trying to separate Taliban fighters from the population. He experienced combat, firefights, roadside bombs, mortar attacks, but nothing that prepared him for what would come later. He returned to the United States in 2010, promoted to captain, and began preparing for his next assignment. In 2012, Captain Groberg deployed to Afghanistan again, this time assigned to Task Force Mountain Warrior in Kunar Province, one of the most dangerous regions in Afghanistan. His role was Personal Security Detachment Commander for Colonel James Mingus, the brigade commander. This meant Groberg was responsible for protecting the colonel during meetings, patrols, and movements throughout the combat zone. Afghanistan in 2012 was a complex environment. American forces were drawing down, trying to hand security responsibilities to Afghan forces. But the Taliban was resurgent, launching attacks against American and Afghan forces. Suicide bombers were a constant threat, individuals strapping explosives to their bodies and detonating in crowds, killing themselves along with everyone nearby. Protecting a high-ranking commander like Colonel Mingus required constant vigilance. Taliban leaders specifically targeted American commanders, knowing that killing a colonel or general would be a major propaganda victory. Groberg's job was to identify threats before they materialized, to position security forces correctly, and to react instantly if something went wrong. On August 8, 2012, Captain Groberg was leading a security patrol in Asadabad, the capital of Kunar Province. Colonel Mingus was meeting with local Afghan officials, and Groberg's team was providing security. The meeting went smoothly, and the American convoy began walking back to their vehicles. It was a routine movement, the kind they had done dozens of times.
Groberg was walking slightly ahead of Colonel Mingus, scanning for threats. The street was crowded with Afghan civilians going about their daily business. Suddenly, Groberg noticed something wrong. A man was moving through the crowd differently, too purposeful, too focused. The man's clothing was bulky, unusual for the summer heat, and he was moving directly toward Colonel Mingus and the American soldiers. In that split second, Captain Florent Groberg recognized a suicide bomber. The man had explosives strapped to his body and was trying to reach the American convoy before detonating. If he succeeded, he would kill everyone nearby, Colonel Mingus, American soldiers, Afghan civilians. Groberg had perhaps 1 second to react. Most people, faced with a suicide bomber, would dive away, seeking cover, prioritizing their own survival. That's natural human instinct. But Captain Groberg had trained for years to suppress that instinct. His job was protecting others, not himself. Without conscious thought, operating on pure training and instinct, Groberg ran toward the suicide bomber. He grabbed the man and pushed him away from the convoy. The bomber struggled, trying to detonate his explosives. Groberg held him, pushing him back, trying to separate him from the American soldiers. For a few seconds that felt like hours, Groberg wrestled with the bomber, each trying to control the situation. Then, the explosives detonated. 4 pounds of military-grade explosives, packed with ball bearings and shrapnel, exploded inches from Florent Groberg's body. The blast was catastrophic. Groberg was thrown through the air. His left leg was shredded, nearly severed. His body was pierced by dozens of pieces of shrapnel. He hit the ground unconscious, bleeding from multiple wounds, his leg hanging by fragments of tissue and bone. But by tackling the bomber and pushing him away from the convoy, Groberg had saved lives. The explosion killed 4 soldiers: Command Sergeant Major Kevin Griffin, Major Thomas Kennedy, Major David Gray, and USAID Foreign Service Officer Rageh Abdel Fattah, who were too close to the blast. But Colonel Mingus survived. The other American soldiers survived. Had Groberg not acted, the bomber would have detonated in the middle of the convoy, killing everyone. A second suicide bomber, working with the first, detonated his explosives moments later. But the American soldiers, now alert to the threat, had taken cover. The second explosion killed civilians, but no additional American forces. Groberg's instant reaction had disrupted the coordinated attack, preventing an even greater catastrophe. Groberg was barely alive. His left leg was destroyed below the knee, held on only by shreds of tissue and bone. His right leg was badly damaged. Shrapnel had pierced his abdomen, chest, and arms. He had lost massive amounts of blood and was going into shock. Army medics rushed to him, applying tourniquets, stopping bleeding, and fighting to keep him alive until a medical evacuation helicopter arrived. He was flown to Bagram Airfield, the main American military base in Afghanistan, where surgeons fought to stabilize him. They amputated his left leg below the knee, removed shrapnel from throughout his body, and repaired damaged organs. Groberg remained unconscious, his body fighting multiple infections and the trauma of his injuries. Doctors weren't certain he would survive. But Groberg had the same toughness that made him an excellent distance runner. His body fought back. After several days, he regained consciousness, confused and in extraordinary pain. The medical staff told him what happened: the suicide bomber, the explosion, the amputation. Groberg's first question was about Colonel Mingus and his men. When told that the colonel survived but 4 soldiers had died, Groberg broke down crying. Groberg was evacuated to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Maryland, where he underwent multiple additional surgeries. Doctors removed shrapnel, dealt with infections, and worked to save his damaged right leg. The recovery was agonizing. Phantom pain from his amputated leg tormented him. The wounds became infected repeatedly. He faced the real possibility of losing his right leg as well. But worse than the physical pain was the psychological trauma. Groberg replayed the attack constantly in his mind. He thought about the 4 men who died, good soldiers, husbands, fathers, men he couldn't save. He questioned whether he reacted fast enough, whether he could have done something different, whether their deaths were somehow his fault. Survivor's guilt crushed him. He also faced the loss of his identity. For years, Groberg had defined himself as a soldier, an infantry officer, a combat leader. Now he was an amputee, unable to run, unable to lead men in combat, unable to continue the career he loved. His military career was over. At 29 years old, Florent Groberg had to completely rebuild his sense of who he was and what his life meant. Physical therapy was brutal. Learning to walk again with a prosthetic leg required months of painful work. The prosthetic leg wasn't like a natural leg. It required constant adjustments, caused blisters and sores, and never quite felt right. Groberg had to relearn basic movements, walking, standing, balancing. Simple tasks that had once been automatic now required concentration and effort. But Groberg approached rehabilitation the same way he had approached running, with determination and a refusal to quit. He worked through pain, pushed past setbacks, and gradually regained mobility. He learned to walk with his prosthetic leg, then to jog, then eventually to run again. He would never run competitively like he had done in high school and college, but he could move, could function, could reclaim some of what he had lost. In 2013, the Army recommended Captain Florent Groberg for the Medal of Honor, America's highest military decoration. The Medal of Honor is awarded only for conspicuous gallantry at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. Groberg's actions, tackling a suicide bomber, saving his commander and fellow soldiers at the cost of his own leg and nearly his life, clearly met that standard. And on November 12, 2015, President Barack Obama presented the Medal of Honor to Captain Florent Groberg in a White House ceremony. Groberg stood in his dress uniform, wearing his prosthetic leg, as the president placed the medal around his neck. The citation read, in part, "Captain Groberg's extraordinary heroism and selflessness, above and beyond the call of duty, are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, 4th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division, and the United States Army."
But Groberg struggled with accepting the medal. He insisted that he didn't deserve it. He was just doing his job. The 4 men who died were the real heroes, he said. He was alive, standing at the White House, while they were in graves. This humility, this reluctance to accept praise while comrades lay dead, is common among Medal of Honor recipients. They understand the cost of war in ways that civilians cannot. After receiving the Medal of Honor, Groberg faced a new challenge, figuring out what to do with the rest of his life. His military career was over. He was medically retired from the Army in 2015. He was 32 years old, an amputee with a Medal of Honor, facing an uncertain future. Many veterans struggle with this transition, and Groberg was no exception. He worked through depression and PTSD with the help of therapists and fellow veterans. He learned that his worth wasn't defined by his ability to serve as a soldier. He had other qualities: leadership, determination, the ability to inspire others. Groberg began speaking publicly about his experiences, sharing his story with military units, veterans organizations, and civilian groups. Groberg also focused on honoring the 4 men who died in the attack. He attended memorial services for each man. He met with their families, sharing memories and offering whatever comfort he could. He spoke their names publicly whenever possible: Command Sergeant Major Kevin Griffin, Major Thomas Kennedy, Major David Gray, Ragai Abdel Fattah, ensuring they weren't forgotten. In 2017, Groberg married Carson Wentz, a woman he had met after his injury. Carson accepted Florent completely, including his prosthetic leg, his physical scars, and his psychological wounds. They built a life together, finding happiness despite the challenges. Groberg had lost his leg and his military career, but he had gained perspective on what truly mattered: family, love, and purpose beyond warfare. Groberg went to work in the defense industry, using his military experience to help develop better equipment and strategies for soldiers. He also continued his public speaking, becoming an advocate for wounded veterans. He worked with organizations helping veterans transition to civilian life,
using his own struggles to connect with others facing similar challenges. Florent Groberg represents a new generation of American military heroes, immigrants who chose to serve, who fought for an adopted country, who sacrificed enormously for American ideals. His story challenges simplistic notions of what makes someone American. He wasn't born in the United States. He didn't grow up reciting the Pledge of Allegiance or singing the national anthem. But he chose America, became American, and nearly died defending American soldiers. His actions on August 8, 2012 lasted only seconds. From the moment he identified the suicide bomber to the explosion was perhaps 5 to 10 seconds. But in those seconds, Captain Groberg made decisions that saved 28 lives, while costing him his leg and nearly his life. This is what heroism looks like. Not a long campaign or strategic brilliance, but a split-second decision to sacrifice oneself for others. The moment that defines Florent Groberg's legacy came during a speech at a veterans event. Someone in the audience asked him if he would do it again. Knowing what he would lose, would he still tackle the suicide bomber? Groberg paused for a long moment, then gave an answer that revealed the true measure of the man. He said yes, absolutely, without hesitation, because 28 people went home to their families that day who wouldn't have if he hadn't acted. His leg, his career, his future, those were prices worth paying to save those lives. He didn't say it boastfully or seeking praise. He simply stated it as fact. The obvious truth that a soldier's duty is protecting others, regardless of personal cost. That is Florent Groberg, an immigrant who became American by choice, a soldier who sacrificed everything to protect his comrades, a warrior who lost his leg but found a new purpose. His story reminds us that heroism isn't about seeking glory. It's about doing what must be done, accepting the cost and carrying that burden with dignity for the rest of your life.